6 years ago, to save my girlfriend, I lost a leg. Since then, she never left my side. We got married and had a child. When everyone envied my perfect family, my wife began staying out all night. Her first love had returned. But on the very night I agreed to divorce, she let her first love punish our daughter so severely that she died. When I hysterically confronted her, she was indifferent, saying, "Can you stop overreacting? Brother Jong is a paid teacher. He only did it for her own good." Her body was weak. She couldn't handle it. That's why it happened. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for spoiling her. Don't blame anyone else. After learning what happened to my daughter, I rushed to the hospital, my mind completely blank. On the way, I kept calling my wife, hoping to ask about the situation, but she never picked up. When I left home this morning, everything seemed fine. My wife had promised to take care of our daughter the whole day. Tomorrow, we would get our divorce papers. We were in the divorce cooling off period. My wife was pregnant. She had also cheated. The child wasn't mine. In 5 years of marriage, she ultimately chose her first love over our family. Without hesitation, she ran back to him. She started staying out all night, checking into hotels with him. She stopped caring about me and our daughter, pouring all her attention into another man. I turned a blind eye to it all, pretending not to see. Even when people around me started treating me like a joke, I endured it all. I didn't want a divorce. I loved Liu Ryan. If it weren't for love, I wouldn't have lost a leg 5 years ago while saving her. When faced with rumors of her infidelity, I pretended not to know. I didn't want this family to fall apart. My daughter, Luo, she can't live without her mother. But Liu Ryan couldn't bear it any longer. A month ago, she threw evidence of her affair right in my face, along with a pregnancy test report. Our marriage had reached this point, and I was truly powerless. I gave in, agreed to divorce. As a condition, during the 1-month divorce cooling off period, she had to spend quality time with our daughter, making up for all she had missed. She agreed. So during this time, she had been taking care of our daughter. I was caught between my career and adjusting to life with a prosthetic, overwhelmed and exhausted. Tomorrow was supposed to be the final day. I never imagined that something tragic would happen. As my anxiety mounted, I couldn't help but feel uneasy about Liu Ryan. All the way, I let my mind run wild, wondering if something might have happened to her as well. When I finally reached the hospital, the doctor shook his head. My heart sank like a stone. Following the nurse into the emergency room, I saw my daughter's pale face, clinging to life. She was covered in blood. Bruises and purple welts marked her fragile body. The sight was grotesque and horrifying. At that moment, a wave of immense grief erupted from deep within me. I could no longer hold back. Holding my daughter, I cried in agony, my heart torn apart. Guo seemed to be in so much pain. Her little face scrunched up like a bun, whimpering, "Daddy, I'm hurting so much." The pain I felt was like my insides were being ripped apart. The look in the doctor's eyes as he shook his head left me utterly hopeless. All I could do was instinctively try to comfort my daughter, gently cradling her in my arms, wiping away her tears. I whispered to Guo, "Don't be afraid. It won't hurt much longer." Because of the overwhelming grief, my voice was shaky and uneven. Then my daughter coughed up more blood, her voice fading to a whisper. "Daddy, I didn't mean to make Mommy angry. Daddy, I miss Mommy so much." The heartache was unbearable. In that moment, I stopped caring about anything else. I called Liu Ryan over and over again. I wanted my daughter to hear her mother's voice one last time. Maybe if Liu Ryan comforted her, there would be a miracle? "Liu Ryan, pick up the phone. The child is innocent. No matter how angry you are with me, I'm begging you, please answer." God, please have mercy on me. Let Liu Ryan answer the phone. But she didn't. After several unanswered calls, the line switched to busy. She had blocked me. My body trembled as I tried to make another call, but then I realized my daughter had stopped breathing in my arms. No matter how much I screamed or cried, there was no response. She lay there peacefully, as if she had fallen asleep. If only I could ignore the blood and bruises covering her body. I almost convinced myself that my daughter was just asleep. But that wasn't the truth. I knelt in the hospital room, holding her lifeless body, crying my heart out in unbearable agony. Despair and grief completely consumed me. Never in my wildest nightmares did I imagine that one day I would have to watch my daughter die right in my arms. The doctor told me that the sudden tragedy happened because of extreme physical overexertion, which caused severe damage to her body's functions. She had been brought in too late. The hospital did everything they could, but they could only offer me their condolences. From the moment the accident happened to her passing, it was less than 2 hours, but it felt as if my entire life had plunged from heaven to hell. In that instant, I truly had nothing left. It was an elderly woman passing by who called for the ambulance. She said she was walking home when, at the entrance of Guangming Community, she saw a child curled up on the ground, shivering. When she got closer, she realized the child was in terrible condition and quickly called for emergency help. I sat in a wheelchair, holding my daughter's tiny body, listening to everything that had happened, feeling like I was on the verge of collapsing. But I couldn't cry. My baby was still in my arms. If I broke down, there would be no one left to stand behind me. I held myself together just long enough to understand what had transpired, but my body trembled with anger and heartbreak. On such a cold winter day, my daughter had been lying on the ground alone when the incident happened. Even the warm clothes she had worn that morning were missing. She was only 6 years old, and there were still marks all over her body. How could those injuries be from her overexerting herself? And where was Liu Ryan? This was his child too. How could he be so heartless? My mind was in complete turmoil. I borrowed a phone from another patient's family and called Liu Ryan. It was already close to midnight. When the call connected, his voice was filled with irritation. "Who is this? Are you out of your mind? Why are you calling so late at night?" I suppressed my rage and spoke. "Liu Ryan, where were you when Guo had her accident?" His voice quickly turned cold and filled with anger. His voice was now laced with anger. "Ji Bacheng, of course, it's you. Are you crazy? Can't you stop bothering me all day long? When the doctor called you, where were you? How busy could you have been? Liu Ryan, Guo is your child. How can you be so heartless? You let her go outside all alone. I don't know how my daughter got those injuries, but Liu Ryan, you must know something." Word by word, I questioned him. "And why was Guo forced into such intense physical activity? Did you know she got hurt? Didn't the hospital call you? Why don't you go there yourself? Why keep bothering me? Ji Bacheng, if she's hurt, just talk to the doctors. Why are you yelling at me? A 6-year-old child, with such poor health, can't handle any stress. Even if something happened, it's your fault for pampering her so much." I just told her to run a few laps outside. I didn't tell her to go find trouble. Don't look at me like you want to eat me alive. And don't forget to go to the civil affairs office tomorrow. The call was abruptly cut off from his side. I was so furious, my entire body trembled, barely able to hold on to my daughter. I called the police. Holding my daughter, I went home. And after a sleepless night of agony, I decided to report it, holding the medical report in my hand. The next day, I spent the entire day at the police station, numb and dazed as I gave my statement. When the police called Liu Ryan, he started cursing and swearing, interrupting the officer impatiently before they could finish. "I've already signed the divorce agreement with Ji Bacheng. We just haven't picked up the certificate yet. He didn't even come today to finalize it. I'm done with all of this. I'm out traveling. Chu Xiaoguo's custody is with her father. If there's any issue, talk to him. Even if Chu Xiaoguo ends up in the hospital, it has nothing to do with me or my boyfriend. That day, my boyfriend and I were hiking. Chu Xiaoguo was at home alone. His words infuriated me to the point of seeing stars. Since the accident, he hadn't shown any concern for our daughter, still pushing the responsibility away. I never imagined that when my daughter had her accident, he was off on a date with his lover. Overcome with emotion, I yelled into the phone at the police officer. Liu Ryan, do you even have a heart? You promised Guo you'd celebrate her birthday with her. You said you'd take her out to play. How dare you leave her alone at home? She's only 6 years old. How could you? Hey, Ji Bacheng, I don't want to argue with a lunatic like you. 6 years old, so what? Did I make something happen to her because she's 6? I wasn't even there when it happened. She did this to herself. What does this have to do with me? She's 6. She's old enough. I prepared everything for her. What's wrong with leaving her at home alone for one day? To be honest, we were already divorced a month ago. Taking care of her is your responsibility. You left her with me, and you have the nerve to talk about me not celebrating her birthday? What were you doing? Don't I have my own life? Why should I have to revolve around the two of you day and night? Stop shouting at me. Think about your own responsibility for once. I was so overwhelmed with emotion that I got into a heated argument with Liu Ryan over the phone. Even while talking to the police, I was pulled aside, and the police continued their investigation over the phone with Liu Ryan, gathering evidence. At that moment, honestly, I lost my sanity for a brief second. For a fleeting moment, I wanted to confront this cold and heartless woman. If she hadn't left our daughter alone, would this tragedy have happened? People around me tried to calm me down, telling me not to act recklessly and ruin myself in the process. But in the deafening silence of the house, looking at my daughter's lifeless body, I finally broke down. I cried uncontrollably. My mind flooded with images of her sweet smile while she was alive. How ridiculous it all seemed. When our daughter was born, she was busy going on dates. When our daughter passed away, she didn't even bother to ask. She rushed off without a second thought to chase the aurora with her first love. She was never fit to be a mother. Or perhaps, she still hasn't realized the gravity of the situation. Maybe she doesn't even know our daughter is dead, which is why she can live so freely without any guilt. She blocked my calls, so I had no choice but to send her a message on WeChat. Liu Ryan, our daughter is dead. Writing those words, my heart ached beyond description. Before her first love reappeared, we were once a happy family. She used to tell our daughter bedtime stories, lull her to sleep, braid her hair, and take her to school. Back then, we were once a joyful family of 3. But over the last 6 months, ever since her first love returned, everything changed. Her heart could never come back to us. When that man sprained his ankle, she rushed to his side, ignoring all the gossip, staying by him day and night. Over time, she began staying out overnight because of him, always available at his call. Eventually, she stopped coming home altogether. That night, the message I sent felt like it disappeared into a void, with no reply whatsoever. I wept like a helpless dog, abandoned and broken. As dawn finally broke, she still hadn't replied. I received a call from the police regarding my daughter's situation. They confirmed it truly was an accident. They had gathered evidence and determined that my daughter's death was because she was left alone. Meanwhile, Liu Ryan had been at home running on the treadmill. As for the bruises on her body, they claimed they were from a fall, But I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't that simple. My daughter had always been so well behaved. There's no way she could have hurt herself like that. Yet I couldn't find any solid evidence. On the day it happened, Liu Ryan was indeed outside with Lin Zhengyi. In this situation, all I could do was bury my daughter in sorrow. During the funeral, I tried to contact Liu Ryan again. She ignored my messages, so I called her from another number. As soon as the call connected, she impatiently scolded me. Ji Bacheng, are you insane? We have no ties anymore. Can't you stop interrupting my normal life? I'm just traveling with Zhang Yi and you can't stand it? Don't forget you signed the divorce agreement yourself. What, are you regretting it now? Guo Guo is dead. The words hit me with unbearable pain, fighting back my fury and despair. I repeated it again. Hey, Ji Bacheng, are you even human? To force me to come back. To ruin my vacation. You'd go so far as to say something like that? Guo Guo is dead. The doctors said she died because of intense, overexerted physical activity, which caused multiple organ failure. She died because they couldn't save her in time. Tomorrow is her funeral. Her last words before she died were that she missed you. Do what you will with that information. Tomorrow will be your last chance to see her. I added one more sentence. Tomorrow, my sweet Guo Guo will be cremated. That soft, gentle little girl will be placed in that small, square box. I could barely breathe from the pain. The next second, her bitter, venomous voice erupted on the other end. Hey, does she know how much you supposedly love her? Ji Bacheng, I'll say this to you one last time. I don't love you. No matter what you do, I will never come back. Even if you die, I won't. The biggest regret of my life is pitying you and marrying a cripple like you. Now I see, not only is your body crippled, but your heart is twisted beyond repair. To say such cruel things and curse your own daughter. You're not even human. Let me tell you this. If you didn't want to take care of Guo Guo, you should have just given her to me. She became a spoiled brat under your care, to the point where she couldn't even handle running without getting hurt. What kind of child is so fragile like that? Which kid would be that delicate? From her furious voice, I sensed something was wrong, and I quickly interrupted her. Liu Ryan, why do you know that Guo Guo got hurt from running? If something's wrong with you, go see a therapist. Trying to have a normal conversation with you. You keep going off topic and rambling. Annoyed, she hung up again. When I tried calling back, it showed that she had blocked me. Doubt began to weigh heavier on my mind. I spent the entire night trying to figure it out, but couldn't. All I could do was muster the strength to cremate and bury my daughter. I stayed at the cemetery the whole day. The thought of my daughter being alone down there left me with an indescribable despair and sadness. That night, grief, regret, guilt, and hopelessness tormented my soul. I cried again like a broken man. Perhaps all of this is karma, a punishment. Maybe I was never meant to desire something that didn't belong to me. I met Liu Ryan during our university days. Back then, my family was poor, and I could only get the leftover meals at the canteen. She was also in a similar situation. Two people from the mountains became close friends. Just when I was about to confess my feelings to her, I found out she already liked someone else. It was her current first love, Lin. Zhang Yi was handsome but a playboy, and they often broke up and reconciled. I kept my feelings for her buried deep in my heart. After graduation, my family's situation didn't improve. Zhang Yi left her to go abroad with a new girlfriend. Liu Ryan silently watched him leave, heartbroken at the airport. Seeing how devastated she was, I followed her and saved her from a dangerous situation. But the price I paid for that was the loss of my leg. She took care of me for several days in the hospital. It was also her who suggested that we should be together. In that moment, I truly believed she had let go of her past and had chosen to be with me. I was overjoyed, feeling like I had just won the lottery. Soon after, we started dating. Even though I was confined to a wheelchair, she didn't seem to mind. Later, we got engaged and married. Then Guo Guo was born, although she treated me with indifference over the years. After we had Guo Guo, our family finally started to feel complete, till Lin Zhengyi returned. She spent days and nights with him, and Guo Guo barely even saw her anymore. More than once, Guo Guo asked me with teary eyes, "Daddy, does mommy not want me anymore? Mommy promised to take me to KFC, to the movies, and to the amusement park. Daddy, is it because I made mommy angry? Is that why she doesn't want me anymore?" I used the threat of divorce to force her to spend a month with our daughter. But even in that month, she was just going through the motions. For this birthday, my precious daughter had been waiting for a whole month. She was so excited, jumping around in joy, telling me over and over that Daddy and Mommy said they'd have cake with me on my birthday. They'd take me to the amusement park. But my sweet, well-behaved Guo Guo, even in death, never got to have that birthday with Liu Ryan. I swore that when they returned, I would find out the truth behind Guo Guo's death. At that very moment, Liu Ryan was flaunting her love life on social media. The picture was of her kissing her first love, Lin Zhengyi. The caption read, "To people, 3 meals for seasons." Meanwhile, our daughter had only recently lost her life. Yet she, without any guilt, had already moved on to a new life. How could she do this? On the 15th day after Guo Guo's cremation, she finally returned. The first call she made from the airport was to me, Ji Bacheng. "I'll attend the parent-teacher conference this afternoon for Guo. I promised her last time. This is the last time. After this, you'd better go on time and take care of her." Hearing those words, all I felt was bitter irony. I had just left the cemetery, and she finally remembered she had a daughter, now preparing to attend a parent-teacher conference. And she had the audacity to tell me how to be a parent. I didn't want to say a single word. Numb, I listened to her pointless chatter. 15 days had passed, and I had begun to find a little bit of peace. But my daughter's death doesn't mean I'll stop searching for answers. During this time, I had already started an investigation into Lin Zhengyi. If he was involved, I won't let him go. And tomorrow, be on time at the Civil Affairs office to finalize the divorce. After that, don't ever bother me again. I silently hung up and blocked her number in return. I couldn't help but wonder, when she finally learns about our daughter's death, how will she react? Will she even feel sad? That very afternoon, Liu Ryan showed up at my door. She was visibly agitated, kicking the door relentlessly. Annoyed, I finally opened it. She glanced at me with disdain. She had been banging on the door for a long time, so when I finally opened it, her temper was flaring. "Ji Bacheng, don't think I'm here to see you. Where did you take Guo Guo? Why didn't you let her go to school? Her homeroom teacher told me that after the incident, you withdrew her from school. What gives you the right to make that decision on your own? Do you even know how good that school is? How hard it was to get her in? Why couldn't you just take a leave?" She was furious. But when she mentioned her expression softened slightly with a hint of tenderness in her eyes. Hey, now she cares about our daughter. But where was she all this time? I scoffed. "Liu Ryan, I've told you many times. If you want to see Guo Guo, you'll have to die first. She died because you left her alone at home. She died that day. Her last wish was to see you before she passed away. But you couldn't even pick up the phone once. Do you really care about her at all?" Hearing this, her pupils dilated in shock. But after a moment of silence, she regained her composure. "Ji Bacheng, you shameless bastard. You're hiding our daughter, aren't you? You're doing this to stop me from divorcing you. Now you're resorting to these kinds of tactics? I'm telling you, my patience is running thin. Tomorrow, I'm not just going to finalize the divorce. I'm also going to see my daughter." With that, she stormed off. She glared at me with fury. slammed the door again, and stormed off. The next day, I didn't go to the civil affairs office. She showed up again, livid and furious. Ji Bacheng, you bastard. You're doing this on purpose, trying to drive me crazy. Where the hell did you take our daughter? I'm telling you, the divorce agreement is crystal clear. I have visitation rights. She's the child I carried for 10 months. If you don't let me see her, I won't let this go. I'll take you to court if I have to. I'll fight you all the way. How laughable it was. Hearing those words from her mouth, it felt like I was the villain in this story. You already have your own child now, don't you? Do you even still care about Guoguo? I stared hard at her stomach, speaking each word slowly. Because of your neglect, Guoguo lost her life. Guoguo is dead. She died because of you. How many times do I have to say it? If you don't believe me, go check with the hospital yourself. Stop causing a scene here. For the first time, I kicked her out of my house. The woman I once loved most now seemed unbearably loathsome. When she saw me standing up from the wheelchair, there was surprise in her eyes. Ji Bacheng, you can actually stand now? Get out, this has nothing to do with you. I pushed her out forcefully. Just then, I received a call from the cemetery staff and felt a headache coming on. I quickly gathered myself and left. By the time I arrived, Liu Ryan, who always held herself so high and mighty in front of me, was now collapsed over the tombstone. Sobbing uncontrollably, gasping for air, she wailed and cursed, sounding like a banshee, resembling nothing more than a shrew. You could hear her cries as soon as you entered the cemetery. By the time I arrived, the cemetery staff stood helplessly to the side. As soon as Liu Ryan saw me, she rushed toward me. Why didn't you tell me sooner? She staggered as she came at me, raising her hand, ready to slap me. But I had another purpose for coming. Liu Ryan, tell me the truth. Did Guoguo run that day because Lin Zhengyi punished her? After I pushed her away, she froze for a moment at my question. Her body stiffened noticeably, but she avoided my question. I'm sorry. Mommy is sorry. Guo, Mommy knows she was wrong. Mommy shouldn't have left you all alone. She slumped against the tombstone, muttering sorry over and over. Seeing her on the verge of fainting from crying, I dragged her away, pulling and tugging her to the cemetery gate. Surprisingly, she didn't resist this time. Now she knows how to cry. Now she knows how to apologize. But where was all this before? Liu Ryan, tell me what really happened that day. Did Lin Zhengyi punish Guoguo? Hearing Lin Zhengyi's name seemed to snap her back to reality. She finally wiped her tears and glared at me viciously. Ji Bacheng, no matter what, Guoguo was the child I carried for 10 months. I loved her too. I admit that I share part of the blame for what happened. But don't accuse Zhengyi just because you don't like him. Zhengyi is a good and kind person, and he loves me more than you ever did. If something went wrong, I'm also sad about it. But we both have our own lives to move on to. Maybe all of this was just her fate, and it spares you from clinging to me in the future. Let's go get the divorce papers now. Guoguo's death hit me hard. But once I get engaged, I'll be leaving here. From now on, we'll have nothing left to do with each other. Her eyes were clouded with pain and sorrow. Yet she still unwaveringly defended Lin Zhengyi, showing me a heartlessness that cut deep. In the end, I chose to let her go. But I promised myself I would get to the bottom of what happened to. After we got the divorce papers, she didn't even glance at me, leaving immediately. Her cold, indifferent figure disappearing without a word. I felt a lump in my throat, my heart bitter and unsettled. But from this moment forward, there would truly be nothing left between us. At that moment, I truly regretted ever falling in love with her. I wandered into a bar, drowning myself in alcohol, afraid to go home. And still, I didn't know what really happened that day. I couldn't believe that Guoguo would have done something so dangerous on her own, but I never expected that I'd find an unexpected clue at the bar. I saw Lin Zhengyi being helped into the private room next door after coming out of the restroom. On impulse, I decided to follow. I overheard them talking inside. Brother Lin, take it easy on the drinks. Tomorrow is your engagement with the sister-in-law. Someone was offering him more alcohol. Through the glass, I saw Lin Zhengyi down his drink in one gulp. His brows furrowed in irritation. Engagement, if it weren't to avoid legal trouble. Who the hell would want to be tied to someone like that? The mention of the engagement made my heart clench. I felt like I had just overheard something critical. I quickly took out my phone to record. Do you guys know? That little brat she brought along has no sense of manners at all. She's so timid, it makes you want to punish her hard. But that stubborn girl wouldn't listen to a thing. Kept asking, scared, if her mom would take her to the amusement park for her birthday. Ridiculous. I told her. Once her parents divorced, she'd be nothing but a little stray kid. Stray kids don't deserve birthdays. Then she started crying, yelling at me that I was lying. She wouldn't stop crying, glaring at me. I wanted to dig her eyes out. She looked pathetically toward her mother. But her mom was in my arms, not saying a word. I told the brat. Her mom and I were going out on a date, and she had to stay home and run on the treadmill. That brat wouldn't listen. She even tried to bite me. I dragged her to the treadmill, set it to run fast, told her she better not fall off. I told her I had cameras, and if she dared step off, I'd beat her to death when I got back. Scaring little kids is so much fun. But she didn't listen. She tried to get off the treadmill. But guess what? All her mom had to do was give her a look. Say one word and the brat stopped acting up immediately. Her mom said, "Chu Xiaoguo, can't you just be a little more sensible? Listen to your uncle, he won't hurt you. It's for your own good. If you don't exercise properly now, you'll end up like your useless father. And nobody will like you." Ha ha, just like that. The stubborn brat stopped crying and actually started running. She was trying to please her mom. How hilarious is that? I wasn't doing it for her good. She's not my child. Why should I care about her? I just wanted to see her cry. I wanted to hear her scream. Ha ha ha, it was so damn satisfying. But she was weak. She couldn't handle it. Just one day and she was gone. How boring! She even tried to tell her mom that I strangled her, that I hit her, but she underestimated her mom's love for me. No one believed her. Ha ha ha, yes, I strangled her. Yes, I hit her. And I watched her silently weep, watched her shiver in fear. I told her, if she dared wake her mom would hate her. I told her that once her mom left this time, she'd never see her again. That brat was fun to mess with, but she didn't last long. At that moment, I felt an icy chill pierce through my entire body. I wanted nothing more than to rush in and beat that monster to death. The fury surged violently through my chest, but I couldn't act impulsively. If I did that, I'd only ruin myself in the process. For someone like him, it wouldn't be worth it. I clenched my fists tightly, holding back the overwhelming rage inside me. I swore that I would make both of them pay for what they did. She was so small, so obedient and kind. How could they do this to her? No, they weren't human. They were demons, devoid of any heart or soul. Right now, all I had was the recording, but that alone wasn't enough evidence. I needed more proof like the surveillance footage from that day. I thought back carefully. When the police came that day, they didn't find any security footage. It seemed he must have taken it down that very night. Now, my only lead would be through Liu Ryan, if she still had any conscience left. But if I confronted her directly, she wouldn't believe me. Even if I played her the recording, she'd likely think I was trying to frame Lin Zhengyi. She wouldn't have the patience to listen to it all. I needed to take a different approach. However, it seemed fate was on my side. just as I was unsure of my next move. The people inside started wrapping up, preparing to leave. Several of them filed out one by one, but Lin Zhengyi hadn't come out yet. Not only him, but there was also another woman I recognized. She was one of Liu Ryan's close friends. These two were getting a bit too cozy. I discreetly snapped several photos of them kissing and groping each other. Lin Zhengyi tried to head to the restroom, and the woman struggled to help him. I followed quietly behind. When they reached the restroom, things quickly escalated into a heated encounter. Despite people walking back and forth outside, they were making no effort to stay quiet. I felt utterly disgusted. I turned on the sink faucet, hoping to scare them out of their act. As expected, their movement stopped. I hid nearby, hearing the sound of them hurriedly getting dressed. "Baby, let's go back to the private room, okay?" I quickly slipped out. Back in the private room, I found a spot behind the curtains and concealed myself well. Under normal circumstances, they might have noticed someone was there. But in this situation, there was no way people in the middle of an affair would notice anything strange. They quickly resumed their activity. I took the opportunity to snap even more photos. These would make the perfect gift for Liu Ryan. Their engagement ceremony was held as planned. When I arrived, Liu Ryan was dressed immaculately, in a high-end gown, looking like she was basking in happiness. When she saw me, her expression darkened slightly, and she glared at me with malice. "Ji Baching, don't you dare cause any trouble," she warned. I smiled, "Of course not. I'm just here to witness the ceremony." I suppressed my anger, speaking each word slowly. In my mind, I added, "and to deliver a grand gift." No doubt. Even if I didn't interfere today, the chaos would still come. This wedding was not going to end smoothly. On the large display screen, where their wedding photos should have been playing, instead, a video of Lin Zhengyi's affair began to play. Accompanying the video, an audio recording started playing over the speakers. "Liu Ryan, who would want to touch her? That old woman's been played out long ago. As soon as she gives birth to my child, I'll kick her to the curb. A divorced, second-hand good? I couldn't care less about her." The entire scene descended into chaos. Some guests made excuses and quickly left, while others stayed to watch the spectacle unfold. Liu Ryan stood there in disbelief, the elegant and dignified smile on her face crumbling in an instant. "Zhengyi, tell me this isn't real. You told me you loved me." Tears began streaming down her face uncontrollably. Lin Zhengyi laughed mockingly, seeing that everything had been exposed. He didn't bother hiding anymore. "Let's lay it all out, shall we?" "Love you? What love? You couldn't wait to throw yourself at me before the divorce, acting like a desperate dog. That cripple Ji Baching, he loved you, sure. I heard he even lost a leg for you, and yet you cheated without a second thought. Love you, I'd never dare. At first, being with you was just because you threw yourself at me. It didn't cost me a dime, so I entertained you for a bit. But afterward, I only stuck around because of the baby you're carrying. Liu Ryan, you weren't worth loving before, and you're not worth it now." Liu Ryan's entire demeanor shattered, as if the reality of what was happening was too much to bear. Her emotions completely broke down, and it seemed she couldn't comprehend what had just happened. She stood frozen, unable to believe any of it. The man she had loved for so long could actually say such things. She lunged forward, trying to slap Lin Zhengyi, but he pushed her down effortlessly. "Just make sure you give birth to my child, or don't expect me to ever look at you again." Lin Zhengyi threw those words at her and strode away. Most of the guests, who had stayed to enjoy the spectacle, were starting to leave. I wanted to go straight up and play the recording from last night, demanding answers about what really happened to Guo. But when I saw her lying there, blood pooling underneath her, I couldn't bring myself to do it. I softened and took her to the hospital. The child didn't survive. Liu Ryan cried in utter despair, overwhelmed by grief. When I entered her hospital room, she immediately started cursing at me, telling me to get out, botching. Are you here to laugh at me? Get out, leave me alone. She grabbed something from the bedside and threw it at me. She looked completely defeated, at her lowest point. I let out a cold laugh, feeling no sympathy for her. Liu Ryan, everything you're going through now, you brought it upon yourself. I didn't come here to pity you. I came because I need something from you. I want a video. The one on Lin Zhengyi's phone. As soon as I said that, I played the recording. With every word from the recording, Liu Ryan's emotions spiraled further into despair. She curled up on the hospital bed, crying uncontrollably, her heart shattered. Eventually, she agreed to help me. After she was discharged, she asked to visit Guoguo's grave one last time. I granted her that. This time, she didn't cry hysterically. She simply crouched in front of our daughter's gravestone, gently touching the black and white photo. Her gaze was filled with deep sorrow, and her voice trembled as she spoke. Guo, didn't you want to go to the amusement park with Mommy? Mommy will take you next time, okay? I'm so sorry, Guo. From now on, anything you want, Mommy will do her best to give it to you. Please, can you forgive me? Forgive Mommy. It's all Mommy's fault. I was selfish, foolish, and I caused you so much pain, Guo. I'm sorry, Guo. Mommy neglected you during this time and didn't spend enough time with you. Wait for Mommy. Mommy will get revenge for you. She said these words with conviction, but her voice was choked with tears. If Mommy had known leaving you that day would, she couldn't finish her sentence, and instead she broke down into sobs. Perhaps even she felt that she deserved to die, that she was unforgivable. For the sake of a man like that. She treated her own daughter like this. She knelt on the ground, bowing multiple times, struggling through her sobs. It took her several attempts before she could continue speaking. I'm sorry, Guo. Mommy knows she was wrong. Please forgive Mommy. I couldn't hold back anymore and interrupted her. Liu Ryan, where do you get the nerve to beg Guo for forgiveness? She will never forgive you. Never. If there's a next life, Guo would never want to have anything to do with you. You don't deserve to be Guo's mother. This time, for once, she didn't argue back. She just stayed silent, which was rare for her. Time passed slowly until the evening began to settle in. A cold wind blew through the cemetery, and finally, she solemnly said her final goodbye to our daughter. Then she turned to look at me. Go home and wait for the news. I will do as you wish. After saying this, she hunched over, turned around, and walked away. The sunset stretched her shadow long behind her. I didn't have to wait long. The next morning, I got a response. But it wasn't a video, nor was it what I was expecting. I saw it as soon as I woke up, scrolling through the news. A naked couple falls from a rooftop. Many speculated they had been trying to experience something dangerous and had an accident from such a high place. The police ruled out foul play. I didn't pay much attention to it. My mind was focused on other things, and I kept calling Liu Ryan repeatedly, but her phone remained unreachable. I smoked in frustration. Until around 9:50 a.m., I received a scheduled email in my inbox. It was from Liu Ryan. Being buried together is the ultimate punishment. That was all she wrote. A sudden sense of dread filled my heart. The news report from earlier that morning. The incident had taken place in their apartment complex. I checked the news again, and in the pixelated video, I noticed the birthmark on Liu Ryan's body. It was really her. I never imagined she would choose such a tragic way to end everything, including the punishment I had planned for her. I visited Guoguo's grave, brought a small cake with me, and carefully lit the candles. I made a wish on behalf of my daughter. I wish that if there's a next life, she could be born into a good family, with parents who cherish and adore her. As for Liu Ryan, I wish that for all eternity, Neither Guo nor I would ever meet her again. Her death would stir no waves in my life. My hatred would gradually fade for the rest of my days. I would live well, carrying the memory of my daughter with me, to embrace the greater warmth of the world.